Hey everybody, it's Craig Syracusa, Walk in Faith. I am excited to be sitting down with Sgt.Mike McGrew. Sergeant, I read this book, and I know I mentioned to you off camera, I read this book in one day, could not put it down. I already did a review on it. This book was, honestly, every chapter, every page, I'll be honest, I started to think, like, is this even possible? But every chapter and every part of the book, it was like a series, a movie. It was a book in itself. In case there's like one or two people out there that hasn't purchased this book yet, which I hope they have, can you tell us a little bit about your story and the book?
Sure. I retired from the Santa Barbara Police Department. I was a cop for 31 years, and I worked patrol, and about half my career I worked major crimes. So I did all the robberies, the homicides, the child molest, sex crimes. I dealt with the worst of the worst of. And my career, there's a lot of interesting things that happened, but there was also in the book, what I wanted to point out is just kind of dealing with trauma and how trauma sneaks up on people because it snuck up on me. And, there was a stigma for first responders to not get help or to not seek counseling for some of the stuff that we've encountered. And that's something that that affected me. It affected my personal life. And then in my personal life as well, I dealt with a lot of different tragedies. My youngest son was 12 years old. He was diagnosed with bone cancer, osteosarcoma. And at about the same time I had my other son was got involved in some drugs, some pretty heavy drug addiction. And so, I didn't know the Lord for the first 20 years of my career. And I didn't really have a place to put the burdens and just all the things that happened, the things that I was carrying. I didn't have a place to put that. And I came to the Lord about 20 years into my career, and that changed everything for me. It was something that there was a big transformation that happened, but it was also a big relief for me. And so I prayed about, what God did in my life, both professionally and then also on a personal level, and how he was so present with me at every step, even when I wasn't a believer. I always thought some pretty bad things out there, but I would always see something that was very powerful and very good that would happen. And that's what kept me coming back. And I didn't know what that was until I realized it was God's grace and that he was present during those times. So I gave my testimony 1 year, a couple of years before I retired, and there was a group of people. It was at a Santa Barbara prayer breakfast, so it was a big deal. Lots of people there, and there was a group of people that came up to me and said, "Hey, you need to write a book. You need to share your testimony." And at the time, I was thinking, I don't need to write a book. But I prayed about it, and the Lord just led me to writing this. He just opened every door possible to make this happen. So there's a lot of prayer that went into this book. I think the hardest thing about writing a book is what do you leave out? But there's things that I experienced that are not in that book that that are just too. You just wouldn't want to talk about it. You wouldn't want to share that because they're just really horrible. But I do talk about some very, I think, things that impacted my life in a big way. So.
Yeah, I think, you definitely could have added a lot more based on what you're saying now, but I think this is powerful, and each chapter sort of references different cases, and it's sort of like I think you're able to reach a lot more people based on every case. A couple of things you said that were interesting. One is, when people come to Christ, and I know from myself, like you think, okay, now I'm a believer, God placed this in my heart and my spirit, and you think life is just going to be easy, right? I came to Christ and, that's it, that's not the case. It's a lifestyle, it's a challenge, and there's always challenges. And when you were a non-believer and you saw and witnessed some of these horrible crimes, what happened like at that time? Did you say to yourself, or did that reaffirm your disbelief in Jesus Christ? Like, did you say, this is sort of like, was it the enemy that would just constantly remind you, say, look, if there was Jesus Christ, how would he allow this to happen? Because you mentioned so many crimes.
Yeah, there was. I always felt like there was something. I just didn't know what it was. And when my youngest son became ill, there was a lot of people praying for me and for my family. And they would talk to me about God. They would talk to me about Jesus and the peace that was there. And I actually would have I'd get angry about that, because I'd say, if there's a God, then why is my son, going, we spent like 200 days a year in the hospital. He lost his leg, it was amputated. And I'd say, well, then why is my son so ill and lost his leg and going through all this? And, it was about 2 years after the diagnosis that I came to this place where I had lost my second marriage. I had one son involved in drug addiction, the other son dying of cancer. And I just had no place to turn. I had, everything that I felt, as a cop, I was always the person that was out there solving everybody else's problems. And I was the pillar for them, but, inside I was broken. And it just, I met my current wife, and we went out on our first date was to a Chris Tomlin concert. And, yeah. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but when I went to that concert, it was at the county bowl. There's about 5,000 people at the event. And Louis Giglio was the pastor. He came out in the middle of the concert and he spoke. And what he had to say just really hit me. It hit me hard. It was like supernatural, because he went down the checklist of, is there anybody out there who feels boom, boom, boom? And I had every single one of them. And I was just like,
how is that possible?
Yeah, thinking, how is this?
That's how we know there's no coincidences. Because look how many things have to line up for you to go to that concert, to meet your current wife, the tickets, what he said, his message. That's how we know. There's no coincidences.
Yeah, there isn't. Yeah, God's miracles are they're so personal, but they have his signature all over it, and it's him when you speak to you that way. So that was the night that I held on to that. And the next day I met with my cousin, Dan McGrew. He's a lieutenant. He just retired from the police department as well, but he was raised as a Christian. And so I went to him and I said, hey, Dan, would you talk to me about Jesus? And he says, yeah, I've been waiting for this. Yeah. So that was it. I started to say prayers that were selfish prayers. They were prayers about, hey, get me out of this, get me out of that. Help me here. But there was a big shift when I realized that, I was there. It wasn't about me. It was about God, and to serve him. And so that changed everything I did in my personal life, but also in my professional life, and I would go out and I wouldn't look at things as a 911 call or call for service. I'd look at them as, God's sending me here for a reason. My son, my youngest son died about a couple years after I came to the Lord. And God was very present during that whole thing. He gave me strength that I would never, ever, I could never even imagine having that kind of strength to give my son's eulogy and to make it through probably the hardest hit that I ever had. And when I came back to work, I had to take about a month off. And when I came back to work, I told God, and I said, hey, I don't want to go to another dead child call. I don't want to tell somebody that they lost their loved one. I'm out. Just leave me, just don't give me these, God. But that's all the calls that I was getting. I was working patrol at the time, and I just continually went to one call after another like that. But I quickly saw that God was using my experience to stand on the doorstep of those people, and just, they could see my heart. My heart was broken wide open. And they would ask me, hey, how are you still standing? And I would say, it's only God. This is the only thing that keeps me standing right now. Wow. So it was a place to witness at a very real and raw level. And, people see that. And so the Lord used just probably the biggest tragedy in my life. He used it for good for many people. And he continues to do that.
Wow. Well, that's what's unique. We all have a unique testimony. Your story relates to me, might not relate to somebody else, but and like you said, every time you get a call, it's like an opportunity. Like I do the same thing. Anytime I meet somebody, anytime I go somewhere, I'm looking for that opportunity to talk about Jesus Christ. And sometimes we can't always speak it, right? Because we don't have the ability, but it's the way we live, the way we carry ourselves, the way, and people want to know there's something different about that person. And that's the Holy Spirit. When you were working and now looking back, and I know, during a storm, sometimes it's hard. Even now in the pandemic, it's hard to see where God is working in all this. When you look back at some of the people you met, some of the people you had an opportunity to pray over, or even when you weren't, had a relationship with Jesus Christ, do you see that Jesus Christ was always tugging you and was always evident throughout your life and your career?
Yeah. I can look back and see that he was always there. And he got me out. There was times where I shouldn't have come home. I mean, there were just some supernatural, Holy Spirit intervention, divine intervention that kept me alive on the job. And, before I was a believer, I'd go, wow, how did I do that? Or how did I get out of that one? But afterwards, I knew I had more courage, I think, as well, to go out and, I wasn't testing the Lord, but it's just like, hey, you know what? I'm here. I was a sergeant, so I was a lot of times in charge of the safety of the other officers around, and making calls on barricaded subjects or whatever it might be. But God would give me that supernatural wisdom, because I would go in and I just start praying as I go into these calls, and I'm like, Lord, I need that wisdom right now, and He would give it to me. And so I was just very grateful. I experienced some things that were supernatural as I was working on the job, and I knew it was God. I absolutely.
Well, did you ever ask yourself, like you said, you're in these situations. I know the riot, right? I know you ran into I'm not sure if his name was Ricky, but you ran into a friend that you happened to run into. And like there was all these coincidences, as a secular person would say. But you ever ask yourself, why me? Like, why is God protecting me? Why is God? Because, there's a lot of people in some of these situations that are, aren't as lucky or weren't, didn't have God's grace or the armor of God. Did you ever ask yourself, like, why? Like, what is the ultimate? What does God want from you? Like, what does He want you to do?
I did. I have asked that question. I know it's in Ephesians where it says that there's a destiny for us, and then God creates us for that destiny. And so despite all of my failings and the things that, I messed up along the way, God's like, no, I'm going to keep you around because I need you for this destiny. And He was, and once I realized that, I was just like so grateful, that I'm going to be here and I'm going to be used by God every day of my life until He takes me home. And, my son, he went when he was 18 years old. He died. His life was like a cherry blossom, but God used his life and that blessing in my life for so many other people and for comfort and for some very amazing things. So I don't know why God does what He does. His plans are way better and greater than anything I can think of. And, I'm just like really glad that He is using me, and I'm glad that I said yes. I think He calls a lot of people, and people they don't answer.
Yes.
He'll say, hey, I need you to go do this, and they're like, I don't think I can, but that's not me.
I mean, you even said it when you were, I mean, the cover of the book, right? I mean, you were praying over someone, and I think you said, I don't know, the role, Lieutenant Sergeant, somebody called you in and said, you can't do that. And most people would, okay, I don't want to lose my job. Like, I do have a problem with certain people, and that separate it all. Like, well, I'm Christian, I'm Catholic on Sunday, and then when I'm at work, I don't really preach the gospel because I'm afraid. How could you do that? Like, and you didn't do that. And I guarantee so many people, like you said, are being called to, you meet somebody, you don't know why. And then, God's like, approach that person. Just like for me, I like to give people rosary beads. If I were to disobey that command, it's like you said, he's going to move on, or he's not going to, or we have a way of just not communicating with him. But you put your life, your career on the line, which is right on this cover, saying, no, I'm going to use this opportunity to preach the gospel. And I think you're right. I think we're all called, but not all of us answer that call.
Yeah. And it's important to hear God and know how he speaks to us. You know, he speaks to us in a lot of different ways. I mean, we were created by his word, you know, he spoke us into existence. My prayer would always be to hear his voice in the different ways that he'd speak to me. And, you know, that could be through the written word, the spoken word, witnesses, circumstances. You know, to me, there is no coincidences. You know, once you recognize that, you're like, wow, okay, I need to go, I need to be with this person. I need to do whatever it is that the Lord wants me to do, and feed into this person's life. Or a lot of times you'll get, you know, I don't think he puts two people together to help one. It's usually, it goes both ways, you know?
Yeah.
So when we reach out and listen to him, it's, you know, there's blessings that are just like way beyond what we can even imagine.
How do you so let's say, I do personally have sometimes issues understanding or recognizing God's voice, right? Sometimes I'm concerned, is this my own desires? The enemy's voice I know because it's always loud and I'm able to decipher that's the enemy. But, sometimes God's voice, I get confused with my own desires, my own ambitions, and then God's voice. I mean, somebody out there, even myself, like, what would you say to me? I know you had the experience in the car where you heard God's voice, but I don't think I've ever really like an audible voice. I felt it. I felt the Holy Spirit multiple times, but how would I know? How would someone else that's watching this can sort of distinguish or discern God's voice from the enemy or inner desires?
Well, prophecy it's a gift, and it's something that God wants us all to pray for. And that is something that I did pray for a lot. I when I looked it up in 1 Corinthians 14 says that it's to be used to edify the church, so build the church up, exhort the church, and comfort men. And I was just like, hey, sign me up, because that's what I was doing every day out as a cop in the field. But then God, I didn't expect that I would actually get the prophecy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how God spoke to me, and it's that voice that we hear, but it's always going to be loving. It's always going to be backed up by the word. It's always going to be encouraging. It's going to be edifying. It's going to ask you to do something kind and loving for somebody else. And that's how God works. You know, if you hear the accuser, Satan wants to say, well, you know what, you can't do this because you did this way back when, or, you're not worthy, or you're not. So those are the lies, right? And so you can hear the lies that come in, but God's truth is just like, it's so real. You get spiritual contentment in your heart and a peace about it. And, sometimes he asks us to do things. One of the things he would test me with, and he still does a lot, he'll say, hey, I'll be in a grocery store, so I want you to go bless that person right now.
Yeah.
And so I'll go, it's a little awkward, but I'll walk up to the person and just say, hey, this might sound a little weird, but I said, God just wants me to bless you right now. And every time they receive it. They're like, they were at this point in their life where they needed to hear that.
Yeah, you did it on the stewardess on the airplane, and
Yeah.
I'm reading that, and I'm like, because I always think about myself, right? I don't like to say the world, me. Would I do that? And I wouldn't. I would be uncomfortable because I know I have, well, you didn't know that she was going to be on your flight, but I don't know if I would do that. I can go up to somebody, and I've done it, and give them rosary beads and maybe say a prayer and walk away, but I get uncomfortable, and it's just something I'm not there yet.
Yeah. I understand that. It is. It takes us out of our comfort zone. But, when we know that the Lord, that is something that the Lord's telling you, hey, just go say hi, just bless that person. He wants us to step out. The enemy he's yelling, hey, that person's going to think you're a weirdo. That person. and maybe they do. But I've never had that experience. And every single time I reached out, there was one time when I was in LAX, another airport story. He does this to me in the airports a lot. But there was a person in a Starbucks line, and he said, go up there. I want you to talk to that guy and bless him. And so I started to walk up. I was a couple of people back in the line, and I saw on a shirt, the shirt says, I hate God.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, I'm going, what?
This guy, you sure?
Yeah, exactly. So he got his coffee, he left, and I was like, I couldn't see him anymore. He's gone. I'm like, I guess he didn't really want me to do that, did you, God? And God's like, nope, go find him. So I did, and he arranged it where this guy was sitting in a little alcove by a broom closet. I would have never seen him in LAX. And so I walked up to him and gave him the message that God put on my heart for him, and he just received it. This
Do
guy.
do you remember what you said? Do you remember what you said to him?
That it was something about that God really cared about him. That he was a special person, and it was just something edifying. I can't remember all the words, but it was received by this guy, and he was just like looked at me with his mouth open, and he's just like,
Wow.
wow.
What did you feel
So
like?
there was something personal that I'm sure that a personal message that he received that I didn't know about,
Of course.
but it sure hit that guy, and it struck me too, because I was just going, wow, thanks God, I'm glad that I did follow up, and I'm glad that guy did get a blessing and a word, at the right time in his life.
Yeah, and you're right, because I do think about, if like when we go throughout life, like you're in an airport, even on an airplane, the coincidence, which we don't believe, the probability of that person being on the flight at that exact time going to that place, I look at everybody and I say, there's a reason we're all together. I don't know what that reason is, and in this case, like you said, you sort of just have this connection with God where you're able to say, okay, I need to say something to this person. Me, I would put my headphones on and say, well, because I'm just working on it. I'm not there. You mentioned something earlier, and I don't want to, miss. It's something that I know is very important. And I have a police chaplain friend who, he talks to me a lot about suicides within the police department, NYPD. And I wasn't aware until I read your book that I guess they're not able to, or they don't feel comfortable enough to go to the superiors or to get help. And you created this fund, this not-for-profit. I want to just, if you could tell us a little bit about that. I don't know if you have statistics, or if you can just enlighten us a little bit about the depression, the suicide that police officers and first responders go through.
Yeah. So there was a program that God put on my heart. It was about 7 years ago. And I saw how much he was moving in my life, and just the comfort and the peace that I had. But I could also compare it to the chaos that I had before I knew the Lord, and just the stress that's in that job, the pressures that are on the people that do that job. And first responders have a very high divorce rate. They have a very high suicide rate. Alcoholism is an issue. There's just a lot of things that hit first responders, and there's just a lot of negative ways to try to deal with it. And I wasn't a stranger to any of those things. But once I found, I started thinking about, why don't cops get help, or first responders? My dad was a firefighter. He was a fire chief. He retired as fire chief here. And the reason is because you would have to go to your boss and say, hey boss, you know what, taking that dead child out of the mother's arms, grieving the mother's arms yesterday really messed me up, and I use that example because that's happened more than once to me. And you would have to go to your boss and say, yeah, I'm not doing good. And then they'd say, great, give me your badge, your gun.
Wow.
There, and maybe you'll get your job back. And 35 years ago, when I came on, the Vietnam vets were the senior officers, and I think they paid the price in post-traumatic stress injuries. And they would just tell you, hey, you're getting a paycheck, suck it up. And if you can't, here, have a drink, and so there was that was the culture. And there was a stigma that you couldn't handle the job, that you were weak, whatever it was. And so the Lord had put me on a foundation. It's a police foundation that raised money for catastrophic things that would happen to officers, and equipment for the department. But through that program, we started a program called At Ease. And what we do is we raise money through the community, and we're able to have a helpline that a first responder can call. When they call that number, they're matched up with a counselor who's vetted and trauma trained, and dealing with first responders and their families as well. And so what that did was it took away a barrier where, they now trusted this program because it wasn't connected to the city or the county or the government. And they knew that it was, being supported by the community. Santa Barbara PD started it, and it became very trusted. It started to grow. The firefighters wanted in. It just grew and grew. So we served 3 counties out here, and last year alone, we served 600 first responders.
Wow.
Through this program. It's secular counseling, but we also, we don't, God's behind it, because God
Of course.
God created this program, and he's still there, and I still pray about it. And we have a lot of godly people working in the program. And there is an avenue for people to come out and pray as well. I'm a chaplain, and I have a ministry, an inner healing ministry. And so a lot of people they've come to the Lord just through this program, and they had no idea that, that God's behind it, but they see the fruits of it. And they don't know why they like it so much.
Wow.
But it's because it came out of prayer, and it's a loving act. It's a kind act towards the first responders, and it's the binding of the brokenhearted. It's just so much happens there. And so the Lord spoke to me about that, and he said, Addie, was the food that was going to bring people to him. It was one of the things.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there like an underlying connection between the majority of them? Like when if it's a first responder, whether it's fire, police, EMT, is it alcoholism? Is it because, they witnessed a horrific, crime? Like, is there something that, or maybe lack of faith? Is it something that connects the majority of them, or are they all unique cases?
No, I think trauma in itself, that's, trauma can be something to somebody that it's not to another person. But if you're in a trauma-based profession like police or firefighters, or we also serve emergency room doctors and nurses, if you're in that kind of environment all the time, you're going to be affected by it. There's no way out of it. And it's how you deal with it. And so people that don't have the Lord, like I didn't have, it would be, a bottle of booze or something. That's where you just go check out. There's just a lot of things that, I think the enemy does this. He wants to isolate us. He wants to keep us away from help. He wants to keep us away from other people. And so, I would come home, and I know that this is true for a lot of people in this profession, that you experience stuff at work that you can't even talk about when you come home, because it's just that bad. You wouldn't want to share that with your family. And you just got to hang on to that. So you come in and you just kind of check out, and there's this isolation that happens. And that's kind of the first sign of post-traumatic stress injuries. This is all of a sudden you're not there for your family. You've checked out because of the issues that you're trying to deal with internally. And so it's common throughout police, fire, just everything I just listed. They all experience that.
Wow. What do you think, just because we are living this pandemic, and I know where I am might be a little bit different from where you are, but do you think there's going to be an increase in people that have, whether it's, suicidal thoughts, alcoholism, because they're witnessing trauma and devastation that nobody was prepared for on all fronts?
Yeah, definitely. So we just this last month, just in this small area, and by the way, we are taking, it's called Addie's International, 911 Addie's International is the name of the nonprofit now. We've opened that up to bring it to other places throughout the country. So we're starting to put chapters in different states now, and there's a lot of need for that. In the local area that I'm in, we just last month we had 75 new cases of first responders coming in dealing with the stresses from the pandemic. And that just, like you said, it adds another layer of trauma on the trauma they're already experiencing.
Yep.
But we're there, we have people that are able to talk to folks and just be there and support them and help them out, And I think most of the times trauma won't hit you right away when it's, because we're all good in the fight.
Yep.
And that's what this program is for. It's not like for somebody to be codependent on. It's something that, will give them support and get them back into the fight and keep them resilient. So, but trauma will hit you about 6 months later.
Wow. And I think a lot, like you said, a lot of people have, they use substance abuse, alcoholism, they bury it, right? It starts to chip away. And a lot of people probably don't want to realize or come to just acknowledge that they're going through depression or anxiety. And I think it's easier to turn to the bottle. We can justify our actions. Our loved ones will justify our actions. And there's so many ways of avoiding. But what you're doing is fantastic. One thing I know before you run, a story that really stood out, and it's at the end of the book, and it was your friend Matt. And I love the story. If you could tell that, because in the beginning it was Matt, I think, who was Christian, who had preached a little bit of the gospel, and then he passed away, and then later on you had the ability to sort of reciprocate what he did for you. If you don't mind telling that story, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. So Matt's, he's my best friend growing up, and his father died when we were about 12 years old. And when his dad, he had pancreatic cancer, and when his dad was passing away, he came to the Lord. And I was in with their family. Their family's just like my family. We're that close. But I saw what God was doing in that family, and it really, that was a seed, I think, that really kept me thinking all the way along, because I could see that, this man, his dad he was bigger than life. He was a man's man and a big developer and a really good guy. But to watch him just lean on Jesus, and his mom do the same thing, it really it affected me in a big way. And I think that was just, God, he does things
Mm-hmm.
on purpose at certain times, and that was one of them. Later on, so his dad passed away, and Matt became more angry at God. He still is, we still talk. I get to speak from my statements. So, I've lost a child. I'm still battling stage 4 cancer right now. And he's watching it. And I just get to talk about what God's doing in my life. I don't push it on him, but he's listening. He's listening. Well, in the book, what had happened was his niece, so his sister's daughter, she had been struggling with some drug addictions as well. She got arrested, and she was in the county jail. And so I went in to go visit her as a cop. I walked in there, and I just sat with her, because she was just in a dark place. You could tell the addiction had taken her into a place of hopelessness, and here she was in literally a dark, jail cell. And I just started to witness to her, and she received Christ at that moment. And I was just so struck by how Matt's dad's faith had touched my life, and then his granddaughter, who he never met, that faith would just actually, there's a line that drew right there with me, where his granddaughter came to the Lord because of his own faith. And you just watch the tapestry that God does,
Yep.
How he weaves things together. And I'm always in awe of that. That's the fear of the Lord for me, just being in awe of what God does.
Amazing.
On a day basis.
And then when you look at that too, it's in a sense, you look at how time is like, not that the way, time just is like this, right? Because that seed that was planted, I don't know, 40 years ago, and now it took all these years for you to meet his granddaughter, for you to plant the seed. But when you look at the two, incidences, there was no time in between. It's just fascinating how just the way, the way we see time. Yeah, and I don't want to, you mentioned, of course, I know you said you have stage 4. Is it colon cancer?
Yeah, so I had colon cancer. Matter of fact, right after I gave that speech, or I was a keynote speaker and gave my testimony at the prayer breakfast, I got diagnosed with colon cancer, and had gone through, busted out, and went into lymph nodes and stuff. And so I had to, they gave me some time to sit down and start to think about the book, and write the book with Sarah Bush, who's another, you could write a book about this book, actually. I tried to put this all together, but yeah, I was clean for 4 years, and then this last September or August, came back. They found it, so they did a surgery, and then I just got hit with it again in February, and so I've been dealing with that. I'm doing chemo now again, and it's it's something that I'm just I know the Lord has it, and I know that He's using it in a powerful way. And it's just I wouldn't, every day I wake up, because the At Ease program's taken off. It's going national and international, and I'm part of that, and the Lord's just using me. And every day I wake up and I'm just excited. I'm excited to go serve God. And a friend of mine, her friend was doing the same chemo, and she's saying, her view was, every day she woke up, she had to choose to live.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I'm just like, I'm thinking, how good is God that he just gives me this excitement, the strength, just to be doing stuff in a situation that brings a lot of people down, so and it's not like the spiritual bypass where I'm just, not feeling anything. I still have to, it's still no fun to do chemo. It's still no fun to suck you dry. But I got to tell you, it's God's he's been doing miracles. So
And you don't, I mean, it's not your time, right? I mean, you have a lot.
No. And he spoke to me about that. He said, there's two words. One was promise, and the other one was faith. And he had promised me that he'd set the time aside for me to do what I needed to do.
Okay.
And then the faith was to have faith, a call to faith to believe in that promise. And so I do. I get it. And I'm just like, okay, Lord. I'm here.
You got a lot more to go.
Yeah, you did. No, I do. I
want to see.
I've never been more fired up in my life. So
I want to see a movie based on this book, or based on every chapter of a series, because this is, I mean, you got the film here. You have multiple stories, multiple books. This story is so powerful. And the one thing before we go, I want to walk away with was you said how, and you see it now. I'm not an apologist. I'm not a priest, a pastor, but we're using our platform to evangelize and preach the word of God. And I think, especially during this time, we all have a platform. We all have the ability to speak, faith into people's lives, and we need to do that, especially now. And you mentioned that in your book, and it's something that really hit me. And I'm gonna take you up on that. I'm going to try my hardest. If I feel, God calling me to speak to somebody, even if, it makes me so uncomfortable, I'm going to do it. I'm not just going to give them the rosary beads. I'm going to say something to them and then walk away. And then I'll build up, a little more courage the next time. Sergeant Mike, if people want to buy the book, purchase the book, find out more about you, do you have a website or any information you could share?
I do. So the book's available on Amazon. I do have a website. It's Sgt.Mike McGrew, SGT, then Mike McGrew, MCGREW. So you can check me out on that. But also for the At Ease program, we have a pretty neat website, and that's under 911 AEI, like the first three vowels, AEI, AtEaseInternational.org. So you can also look at that program. If somebody's interested in starting a chapter up in their area, just reach out to us, because God's moving and there's some great things happening right now.
Wow. Sergeant Mike, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. I would advise everyone, buy the book, pick up the book, support Sergeant Mike. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Always remember, you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you.
God bless you.